Tonight at 11, former president and Georgia native Jimmy Carter has died.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
The longest-lived president in American history.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
Leaves behind a legacy of love.
Well, the best thing I ever did was marrying Rosalind.
We have live coverage from Plains, Georgia tonight. WJCL 22 News at 11 starts now. As we come on the air tonight at 11, we are remembering the life of former President Georgia native Jimmy Carter. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Greg Coy. Carter was the oldest living former president, serving just one term from 1977 to 1981. It's also his charity work after leaving office that many are now remembering. For example, in 2002, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for helping to bring peace to international conflicts, promoting human rights and social and economic development. For many people, he was President Carter. To some, he was James Carter Jr., and to a lot of people in Georgia, he was Jimmy. From Plains, Georgia, to the State House and then to the White House, Jimmy Carter became the 39th president to lead this nation. But it all started on a peanut farm in Plains, Georgia, about 3.5 hours from Savannah. And that's where we find WJCL 22 News' weekend anchor investigative reporter Andy Cole. Andy, that community of Plains really shaped his life, you've learned.
Absolutely, Greg. This is an incredibly small-knit, small population town. In 2023, the census had this population at 550. So this is an incredibly small-knit town that made the man who became Jimmy Carter. And, you know, as the years pass, the decades pass, the century has passed, Jimmy Carter has made this town. He grew up here in the 20s and 30s as a peanut and cotton farmer in southwest Georgia, here in his hometown of Plains. But his humble roots never stopped him from dreaming. He went on to the Naval Academy, where he became a nuclear submariner. After leaving the Navy after serving for several years, he returned to Plains to run his family businesses, but that's when politics became calling. He became Georgia's governor in 1971. But then he ran for the nation's highest office. It was incredibly difficult, as Carter discusses in his autobiography, A Full Life. But he said he was able to do it because at the time he was the only candidate to campaign in every single one of the 50 states of these United States of America. But a humble man until the end. His impact is arguably so much greater after he left the White House. He and his wife, Rosalind, started the Carter Center in the 80s, where they helped impoverished nations and their people. They were also outspoken supporters of the organization Habitat for Humanity, building homes for the less fortunate. Up until their late 90s, the couple were they were true lovers. They really loved each other for so long. You know, there's an odd feeling here in Plains, because when the sun rises tomorrow, it will be the first day in 100 years that Jimmy Carter is not a part of this town. So I imagine over the next few days, we're going to see some people come in who grieve Georgia native former President Jimmy Carter, who passed away today at the age of 100. Here in his hometown of Plains, Georgia, I'm Andy Cole, WJCL 22 News.
And Andy, is so apropos that over your shoulder there is the sign, Plains, Georgia, home of Jimmy Carter, our 39th president. Andy Cole is going to join us throughout the broadcast, our weekend anchor, investigative reporter. Thanks so very much. And former President Jimmy Carter and his wife Rosalind were the longest married presidential couple in American history. This is a love story, and the first few pages were written in rural Georgia, where he was just reporting.
When I first had a date with her, the next morning I told my wife, my mother, that was the girl I wanted to marry.
Life with Jimmy Carter has been an adventure.
The Carters celebrated their 77th wedding anniversary, 77 years of marriage, in July of 2023. Rosalind Carter died that November, and we brought you those stories from that community in Plains. In one of Jimmy Carter's final television interviews, he says she was the sun in his day.
President Carter, you say often that marrying Mrs. Carter was the pinnacle of your life, more than any presidency.
Oh, yes. That was the most important thing in my life. It was happy and joyful, and obviously long-lasting. We've always grown deeper in our love for one another. I think that's a kind of extraordinary thing that happened to very many couples, but it certainly happened to us.
Married for 77 years. Can't say that enough. Their adventure together took them for the White House. In January of 1977, his presidency ended after just one term. Right now, people are remembering the life and the legacy of former President Jimmy Carter. ABC's Christiane Cordero brings us reaction from U.S. lawmakers and dignitaries.
Tributes to former President Jimmy Carter began pouring in almost immediately after the news of his passing. President Biden, in his address to the nation this evening, said to know the 39th president was to know that in his core, he never stopped being a Sunday school teacher in Plains, Georgia.
What I find extraordinary about Jimmy Carter, though, is that millions of people all around the world, all over the world, feel they lost a friend as well, even though they never met him. And that's because Jimmy Carter lived a life measured not by words, but by his deeds.
Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton add Carter was guided by his faith. President Carter lived to serve others until the very end. President-elect Donald Trump acknowledged their political differences before writing, "The challenges Jimmy faced as president came at a pivotal time for our country, and he did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude." From former President Barack Obama, quote, "Michelle and I send our thoughts and prayers to the Carter family and everyone who loved and learned from this remarkable man." And Habitat for Humanity, an organization the Carters began volunteering with more than 40 years ago, writing today, "We are grateful for the incredible impact the Carters have had on Habitat and on the families who have benefited from their shining example." Jimmy Carter, who was awarded the Presidential Medal of Honor in 1999 and the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002, talked about how he hoped to be remembered.
I'd say maybe peace and human rights. I kept the country at peace for 4 years and promoted peace for other people like Egypt and Israel and opened up new avenues of commerce and trade between us and China and that sort of things. And we've been champions of human rights. So I think those two things are the ones that I hope to be remembered.
He will lie in repose at Georgia's state capitol and then at the U.S. Capitol, followed by a service at Washington's National Cathedral. His final resting place will be in the backyard of his home in Plains, Georgia, next to his wife, Rosalind. They were married 77 years when she passed. Christiane Cordero, ABC News, Washington.
Meantime, local political leaders across coastal Georgia are remembering former President Carter with praise. Before being elected president, he served as a state senator, also the governor of Georgia. Congressman Buddy Carter believes the former president will be remembered for his faith. He stressed that a lot to me and during our interview, and his accomplishments out of office.
His work with Habitat for Humanity, the Carter Center, it did so much good. You know, my admiration for him is that, you know, his life was a service to others. And I think that we all could, if we could emulate that, we'd be better served.
Congressman Carter also told me that President Carter had some major milestones. They include the Camp David Peace Accord and his fight against infectious diseases worldwide. There will be public observances in Atlanta and also Washington, D.C. There's going to be a private interment in Plains, Georgia. The final arrangement for President Carter's state funeral, including all the public events and the motorcade routes. If you're interested in attending and paying your respects, we can tell you they're still pending. As soon as we know, we'll be posting it online. So then you should download the WJCL 22 News app to read about the life of the former president, also to get updates about his funeral arrangements if you want to pay respects. Now for a check of your forecast is alive. Here's a look, I should say, at River Street this morning. Take a look at that. Boy, you can see the rain was really coming down when our photographer was out there. Downtown Savannah experiencing mild flooding this afternoon. Storm tracker Jada Russell joins us now. Close out 2024 with some mild temperatures, and also we had some rain.
That's right. And honestly, that rain that we saw earlier, you couldn't see quite much of downtown Savannah, and now you can't see much of it with all this fog following the storms that we've seen this morning. So it is rather dense, and it's starting to continue to build over the couple of hours. It was just a brief little bit of fog when I left my home a little earlier, but that was a couple hours ago, and you can see how much that's changed. Our humidity is sticking around that 93% mark. I did see 97 just a couple moments ago, but that's where that fog is going to come from, but we are seeing a slight breeze throughout the rest of our night, and that'll carry on for the next day or so as we move into the first couple of days of the work week. 58 is where we sit right now, rather comfortable. But as we look at some of the radars, we can also see that some residual showers are still lingering, but we will have a dry week for the rest of the week. If you want to download the WJCL 22 News app to get a look at your 10-day forecast, go ahead and do so. You can find it in the Google Play and Apple App Stores.
Jada, thanks a lot. I want to give you a look at storm damage from north Georgia. In a second, we're going to show you. You can see severe weather brought down tree limbs and other debris in Fayette County. Right now, cleanup is underway after the National Weather Service confirmed that a tornado touched down there this morning. Still to come, we'll have another live report with our weekend anchor investigative reporter Andy Cole from Plains, Georgia, the hometown of former President Jimmy Carter. We continue with our top story tonight. Former President Jimmy Carter has died. He was 100 years old. WJCL 22 News' Andy Cole, usually sitting in this chair, but he's live from Plains, Georgia tonight. Andy, the former president really had an impact on that city. You could just tell by that sign over your shoulder.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Greg. Plains had an incredible impact on Jimmy Carter, and Jimmy Carter had an incredible impact on Plains. But it's not just here, this small town in southwest Georgia. You could argue his impact is all over the world. After leaving the White House, him and his beloved wife of more than 75 years, Rosalind Carter, started the Carter Center, which helped impoverished nations. The pair were also incredibly involved with Habitat for Humanity, building homes for the less fortunate. Jimmy Carter, a devout Christian, always believed in doing right by others, doing the best for others, and that is how he's being remembered tonight here in Plains. Lots of news media is gathering, and they are getting ready to, as people from all over the state and the nation come to grieve the 39th President of the United States. Here in Plains, I'm Andy Cole, WJCL 22 News.
Andy Cole reporting live from Plains, Georgia. Thanks so very much. In October 2024, Jimmy Carter became the first U.S. president to become a centenarian. We were in Plains, Georgia, right where Andy is right now, as his hometown and loved ones celebrated his life.
When he went in hospice in February of 2023, I did a lot of interviews and people were saying, you know, how did I feel about it and everything. I said, oh no, he'll be here till he's 100.
And Leanne Smith, Jimmy Carter's niece, was right. Her uncle made it to the centenarian mark, and his hometown of Plains put on quite the celebration for the former U.S. president.
Happy birthday to you!
Carter's sister-in-law, Alethea Wall, says Carter was asleep much of his final days, but there were still some special moments.
I woke him up and I told him who I was, and he looked up at me and he said, I love you, and I said, I love you too. And kind of shocked the aides because he hadn't been talking like that much.
Now that he's passed, his family has a request for you at home.
I was thinking, who's going to carry on his legacy? You know, who's going to do for the world what he has done? And then, you know, you just kind of settle down a little bit and think, well, it's partially my responsibility. And it's everybody else that loves and thinks a lot of him and respects him, that, you know, our steps may not be as big as his, but one or two steps in the right direction keeps his legacy going.
That was Brooke Butler reporting, and you can download the WJCL 22 News app to read about the life of the former president. Our coverage of the legacy of Jimmy Carter will continue at 11:30, about 14 minutes from now, right here, of course, on WJCL 22. It's the fourth night of Hanukkah and a celebration held in Forsyth Park today. Hanukkah at Forsyth featured live entertainment, plenty of traditional food for festival goers, and lots of fellowship. Savannah Mayor Van Johnson got in on the fun, lighting the giant menorah. The festival was put on by the city of Savannah in partnership, by the way, with the Savannah Jewish Federation and Chabad of Savannah. Now for a full check of your forecast, storm tracker Jada Russell is here. And Jada, you're tracking a cold blast arrive sometime next week.
That's right, Greg. We're going to see a couple of days of beautiful sunshine, warm temperatures before we get back to that seasonal feeling of around the 50s that we've seen for the past couple of days. And then there's a cold blast on the way following that. So we'll walk through that in just a moment. Following the impact day storms that we've seen for most of the day, we're just left with some residual showers like I mentioned earlier, but a great deal of fog for us. If you saw our camera earlier, it is something to see. We haven't seen much fog for the past couple of weeks, but tonight is one to see. What we are seeing right now is 58 in Savannah, 61 for Richmond Hill, and as we move further inland, we're seeing 59 for Vidalia, 55 for Reedsville. So temperatures are still dropping into those 50s for some of our surrounding communities. But overnight tonight, moving into tomorrow, we start to see temperatures start out around the mid-50s. So once we start our morning, you'll be around 50 degrees outside with a couple of clouds out there too. We are expecting a breeze to continue for the next day or so, heading into around Tuesday, Wednesday. As we start the new year, it'll be a little breezy outside, so a light jacket may be recommended once we get further into the week. But since our Monday is going to be quite warm, you might be fine outside without a jacket. As we look at our rain chances, once we push through the storms from earlier, there's not much rain to calculate for this week. We are seeing some showers that may pop up around Saturday or Sunday, but once again, those are going to be slight showers, quick, sporadic, and nothing like we've seen from this morning. No downpours like that. Now, what I mentioned a little earlier was that we may see a cold blast across the nation, really. You see these frigid, this frigid marker here, but January 7th through 12th is what we're really looking at as far as these frigid temperatures. Most of us could see temperatures drop to around our high being maybe in the low 40s. Some areas are seeing an expounded amount of snow. So luckily we don't have to worry about that here in the south, but it will be a little bit of a shock to our systems because it hasn't been quite cold for the past couple of days or so. So what we are expecting for our 10-day, once again, temperatures will stick around the 70s for us. For the next couple of days, we're closing out 2024 on a quiet note with our weather. And as we start the new year, temperatures will get back to somewhat seasonal right around Thursday, looking at 58 degrees there, which is just under our normal high of about 62. As we get back into the rest of the week, we start to see temperatures stick around that 60-degree mark. Some areas will see the 50s before us in Savannah. We'll see that as a high, but as we continue the week, cloud coverage starts to grow as well. Once again, those rain chances start to grow right around Saturday and Sunday. Moving into Monday, we will see some sporadic showers within those days. But the same can be said for our coastal communities. We start to see temperatures stick around that 70-degree mark, but they get back to our normal high right around 62. For some areas, we'll still see about 56 for the rest of the week, and then Monday, Saturday, and Sunday as well, we could see some sporadic showers within those days, but that cold blast, once again, isn't expected until the week right after that. So we'll keep you up to date with our WJCL 22 News app. You can download it for free in the Google Play and Apple App Stores.
Jada, thank you. You're looking at the White House. Its flags lowered to half-staff in honor of the passing former President Jimmy Carter. A look at sports when we come right back.
Welcome into sports. I'm Pat Timlin. After preparing in Athens for the past 3 weeks, the Georgia Bulldogs touched down in New Orleans on Sunday to kick off the Sugar Bowl festivities and a new era at signal caller for Georgia. Carson Beck out for the season, and declaring for the NFL draft means Gunnar Stockton as the Dogs QB1 ahead of their clash with Notre Dame. According to his coaches, he's done a great job all year preparing for the moment his number was called, yet they've used this extra time to really set Stockton up for success.
It put him in a lot of situational football that we would have done for anybody, but it was a chance to get him more third down opportunities, more red zone work, more 2-minute work for the end of the game against our defense. So I think that extra time was beneficial, that we got to kind of go back to camp mode and practice those situational football where he's got a lot of it, but not as much as your starter would get.
I've always had confidence in Gunnar. Me and Gunnar have been having a great relationship since high school. You know, he comes in and works hard every day, like he's quarterback one since I've been here. So it's really like this. Nothing's new to me.
A former Bulldog is already lighting up inside Caesars Superdome. Brock Bowers broke Mike Ditka's long-standing rookie receiving yards record. Bowers now boasts over 1,100 yards and 108 receptions. That's the most by a rookie ever. regardless of position, as the Raiders win 25-10 over the Saints. We get closer and closer to kickoff for a big-time bowl game for the Palmetto State. South Carolina aims to take care of business in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl and finish off a 10-win season for the first time since 2013. This Gamecock squad playing with a ton of pride and for each other. Since they suffered a 2-point loss to Alabama in mid-October, only 2 key contributors for Shane Beamer are sitting out. That's running back Rocket Sanders and defensive lineman Kyle Kennard. The rest of the guys are going for the team's 7th straight victory, which would be their longest winning streak in over 40 years.
This is a group that's been very committed to one another, going all the way back to last year, and trying to get a 10th win is something they're very hungry to do, along with spending a week together down here in Orlando. So it says that our culture is strong. It says that our players enjoy being a part of this program, and it says that our guys are really, really excited about being down here and competing on the 31st.
Here's a look at this matchup by the numbers. Both teams averaging over 4 touchdowns per game. The Carolina offense a bit more productive, yet more prone to turnovers. That Gamecock defense, though, does a great job of getting after the quarterback. Kickoff set for 3 p.m. on Tuesday. Ghost Pirates trying to pick up their 4th straight win on the road in Charleston. Reese Vitale, big part of their recent success. Pretty 5-hole finish there to the final moments of the second, tied at 1. 2-man game with Logan Drevich and Vitale. He goes 5-hole again, 6th point in the last week for Vitale. Stingrays force overtime, yet that's when Devin Pauliani banged home a game winner. Ghost Pirates take it 3-2 for their 4th win in 8 days. That's a look at sports. Keep it here.